Hi, hello, and welcome to LX2 Codependency Coaching. I am Stella. We are recording in my office until we aren't. We are still looking. Things are moving forward. It's happening. Wanted to come on today and talk a little bit about this thing that I've been saying often. And what I'm noticing is that with my clients, it's a helpful tool to help them kind of get out of the spiral a little bit, or just to pay attention to how that kind of spiral thing happens, and then you can switch the perspective. It's called closing the loop, and I've been saying it for a while now, but as I have been talking to clients, especially with anxiety or ADHD, it is an opportunity to kind of switch how we are mentally working through that spiral in terms of like starting something, getting it done, and then finishing it up, or specific to anxiety and really recognizing when it feels like it's kind of going off the rails or, into that doom train situation. So what am I talking about? Well, I think I've shared with you guys, like a lot of people a lot of people, and by the people I mean women, like to watch crime shows, crime dramas, or real crime kind of situations. And part of what we like to do, because I am one of those people, is I like to kind of get in the meat and potatoes of the whatever's happening, and then it's tied up in a bow and it just kind of ends. That closes the loop. Really recognizing like when our brain is kind of dealing with stuff, and a lot of times it's an interesting thing that I've observed that women like to watch crime shows before they go to bed or when they're just trying to detach from whatever's happening in reality. In fact, I think there's an SNL skit on murder shows. It's really kind of funny. But it's that, right? It's like watching the things from beginning, middle, and end, and then it just kind of closes up and closes the loop. Specific to tasks, a lot of times people will feel overwhelmed or, kind of inundated with, I don't know where to start. And what I've talked about in the past is just doing one thing and doing it from beginning to end. So whatever that is, like clearing off the kitchen table, doing the dishes, organizing. A lot of times people who are neuroatypical will have piles of stuff all over. I am a pile person as well, though I only have one kind of unmanaged pile. And I do like to go through every once in a while and just like file what's in there, or, look at the dates, make sure that I have paid all the things. And so that is one of the ways that I close the loop. The other thing is, for me, I like to have a clear desk. Some clients have called it like clearing off the brown spaces and just being able to see the table or see the desk or see the, whatever, end table. Wherever it is, you find yourself kind of dumping things, and sometimes it's going through the mail, right? And a lot of times people will just like pick up the mail, put it in a place, pick up the mail, put it in a place, but they don't go sit down and go through it, or there's not a designated time to go through it. And so this would be kind of an indication that things have become unmanageable, right? Doing those kind of minutia, regular, boring tasks of doing the dishes or, opening the mail feel overwhelming. And for a lot of people, it gives them anxiety. I've had some clients who are, they work in production, or they work in kind of an industrial space, and when they change over or like have gotten a promotion or are not doing the hands-on tasks, a lot of times they'll get anxiety. They'll feel kind of overwhelmed if they have multiple tasks, not even just the production people, but like people in general. If they have multiple tasks, a lot of times it is difficult to kind of start a situation and, work it through until they clear off the space, or they open up, more, opportunities to feel like they have time. A lot of times when we go into a depressive season, a lot of energy that we used to have to get things done dissipates, and we feel like we're walking through quicksand. And it makes it really difficult then to do the regular tasks that need to get done consistently. And I've told you guys, I am a routine person. I like to do the same things over and over. I don't like to eat the same things every day, but I do like to have, that routine of like, I get up in the morning. I very much like, go and brush my teeth and do those things, and then I make the bed, and I have a very structured life because that's how my brain feels good. But not everybody has that, and a lot of times our lives are not conducive to having that regular, consistent structure. And so if we can implement a little bit of structure, that would be helpful. I also talk about closing the loop when you are detaching from work. Now, when you work from home, that is more difficult because you're in a space that you live in on a regular basis. But for my clients who have really kind of mental heavy workloads, it's important for them to have a routine so that they can start to just, detach from their work experience. And then if they have a commute, kind of having their practice or process to do that. A lot of times that has to start before you leave the building. So if you have, closing work, whatever that looks like, to be able to hand off to the next shift or to be able to walk away from the work that you're doing on a regular basis. Like for me, my last session is usually at 4:30. Sometimes it's earlier, but typically is at 4:30. I like to do my notes by the end of the day, and that is a me thing. But somebody was asking me, that's why we're talking about closing the loop. They were like, how do you kind of close out from talking to people, and especially when it's like heavy every day? And I said, well, part of how I do that is because I work with so many clients, like I love to do the notes because that closes the loop for me, right? I'm in the session, that 45 minutes or whatever it is, we're talking and processing. Doing the note for me helps to close it down. Doing the note for me helps to kind of tie it up in a bow and be like, okay, this is what the client processed, this is what they're working on. When I close that note, then I'm able to walk away from that session, right? And because I usually have 5 sessions in a day, it's really important for me to be able to close the loop and finish out the note, and then I don't think about that client again, and recognize that they have the tools and skills to be able to do that. I've said before, I trust my clients that they're able to manage their lives outside of the 45-minute space that I hold for them, and that they're able to take care of themselves, that they're able to do the things that they need to do to get through. And a lot of times that's going to require them closing several loops, right? When we have littles, I talk about parenting a lot, but it's important for them to start to learn how to close those loops, right? I remember, and I think I've shared with you guys in the past, like teaching my daughter how to dress herself was really important because we had, a busy life and we had a lot of things to get done. And so even having a little song about like, the tag in the back, how you put your pants on, how you put on your shirt, the tag goes in the back. When I worked in childcare, early childhood development, I would have a little song about picking up our toys when we transitioned from one, circle time or mat time to the next thing. And it was a little song about picking up your toys. But it helps our kids to recognize that, we can be in the present and dealing with a thing, and then how do we transition? Because what I know to be true for human beings in general, typical, neurotypical or not, is transitions can be challenging. And when we start a new situation, whatever that is, sometimes at the beginning, people can feel overwhelmed. Years and years ago, when I was traveling, I was talking about being in the middle and how, for me, I thrive in the middle. The doing of things really helps for me. For some people, it's the beginning of things. They get excited about starting a new project or starting a new task or going to a new place. And for some people, like me, I do the beginning because I don't get overwhelmed or frustrated with that, but I like the middle. The end is a little bit more challenging. I deal with a lot of grief or change or whatever. Not as much, but there was a time. And some people really struggle with the end, so they put it off. They don't like to finish it up. But really recognizing when we can end something, when we can close the loop, or get to that place where the task is accomplished or something is done, one of the ways that I really encourage when people are, at the end of something, so they're like changing over jobs or, moving through life where things end, because things often end, if they can get to a place of gratitude for what happened, which is difficult to do. You know that I preach gratitude on a regular basis, but I do acknowledge that getting to that place of gratitude, especially for a hard thing, is a challenge. Like, it's difficult to do, but that is a way to close the loop, even when we're doing mundane tasks, right? Like getting the dishes done, being grateful that you were able to get it done and have a clean sink. I love observing clean environments, right? My brain it does better in order. And so in order for me to manage my brain, creating order from chaos, closing that loop is a way that my brain feels better. And what I know to be true with clients is that's also true for them, is that when they can see a finished product or see a clean environment or recognize that, like, okay, the time that I spent doing this thing is done, they feel better. And it's helpful to recognize that even if I don't feel like I control a lot of things in my environment or what's going on in my life, that's why I say control what you can. In the space that you're in, how do I control something in this space to be able to feel better and have a conversation or get a task done or apply for a thing, whatever it is that you need to do. Once you get it finished, you feel better. And a lot of times, like, clients will say, I know that, like, clearing off the kitchen table, for example, it only takes me 20 minutes, but to get to do it, or to, like, get the gumption or the motivation or the whatever it is to start the project is difficult. And then once I do it, I feel better. And a lot of times, again, with ADHD, it feels overwhelming just to get the one thing done, just to start one thing, because there's usually 5 or 7 things. And I used to say that I get my steps by going from room to room to room and, starting a bunch of little things. Eventually they all get done, but I know that someone who struggles with, getting tasks completed because their brain will not allow them, or they get distracted, or they can hyperfixate on doing one thing, but then to do another thing is very difficult. I've got clients who will remind themselves, go to the kitchen and get the, bleach or whatever. They have to say it over and over as they're walking through the house to get to the kitchen to get the thing that they need. I cannot tell you how often, especially with perimenopause and brain fog, I walk into a room, and I live in 500 square feet. I walk into a room and I go, what was I in here for? What am I doing? Like, if I step away from the computer and then come back to it, I'm like, what was I doing? What is the task? Like, I have to remind myself, right? But if we can get in the habit of completing one thing and closing the loop on that, it feels better, right? Clean environment, things off your list, off your to-do list. Even just at the end of the day, closing the loop and using a little bit of gratitude really does make a significant difference. I think I shared with you guys last time that I struggle with seasonal depression, and I have a hard time, kind of getting out of my thought loop of negativity, that downward spiral of everything sucks. But one of the ways that I've been able to consciously work through it is to fact check through the day of, like, the things that are true and also are neutral, if not positive, right? And sometimes on the weekends, it's nice to be able to be like, okay, there's food in the refrigerator, I have a place to live, gas in the car, whatever it is, right? Even going through that small list of, like, I had a good coffee, I got my workout done this morning, all of those things, and then following it up with gratitude. That is a way to kind of close that loop. Sometimes it's having, just like I said, starting the task is difficult. I get that, especially when you don't feel like starting tasks. Sometimes we wake up with the best intentions of, I have a list of 5 things I need to get done today, and we get through 3. And, but starting the task of, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and do my notes. I'm going to sit down and check my email.
I'm going to sit down today and do my gross receipts taxes. But being able to sit down and do one thing at a time. And we live in this kind of fast moving expectation of like multitasking is the only way to get things done. And then our only worth and value is in our productivity and how did we get things done? What did we get done today? It's helpful to start to shift the mindset of like, not just have I got things done, but I've been able to do it. And, even if I didn't get it all done, I did get some things done. I was able to get up and, put clothes on today. The high today is 65, which I have convinced myself that is appropriate pants weather. I didn't put on jeans, but I did put on pants as opposed to the shorts that I normally wear. And it was nice to be able to know that, okay, I know what the temperature is. I know that it's going to be a little bit more chilly today. I'm going to dress warmly. Over the weekend, I was able to change over my closet from my spring closet to my fall or winter closet and, kind of put away those things and reorganize and take out my sweaters. And, that was a really productive thing that I felt like I was able to, kind of close off spring, summer, and put the clothes in storage and take out my fall clothes. And that was a way to close the loop, right? To open a new loop of warm, cozy clothes. I do love sweater weather, sweatshirt weather. It's kind of nice. But I'm saying that like it's helpful to recognize those things that we feel like are undone, not to hold our value and worth in them, but to acknowledge that like life is going to move forward. And there are lots of times where we get derailed, where something happens and then we have to pivot and do other things or have other emotional experiences and we get off track, right? It happens, and it happens often when we are dealing with so many things at a time, just our regular life things, and then, the state of the world and all the things that are happening. Sometimes, you feel like everything's going fine and then you have a car issue or, you have a family issue and we get derailed from getting the things done that we want to do that not just make us feel like we've accomplished something, but actually help to move the life that we're living forward. And so trying to figure out how to implement things that help us close loops so that we don't feel so overwhelmed or inundated by all of the piles of things that are happening, right? And it's important. It's important for our mental health, but also to have spaces that we feel comfortable in that don't feel so overwhelming or so heavy, right? We can't always close the loop on emotional relationships. That's just, it's helpful when you can, but sometimes those things just like end abruptly or change abruptly and you're like, I don't know how to get back to feeling connected or in an environment where I want to, spend time, because I can't go into the living room, it's just like a whole mess, or I can't spend time in the kitchen because it's a whole mess, or, and I'm talking from a place of privilege. I do recognize that, because not everybody has all of those things to be grateful for on a regular basis. Sometimes it's just, did you get time to yourself for an hour or 15 minutes or whatever it is, but being able to experience that time and enjoy it, or at least kind of get through it and then, make it to the next day. It feels often like we are in Groundhog Day. There's a movie in the 80s with people, Bill Murray, I think, was in it, and kept waking up on Groundhog Day. It was the same thing over and over, and a lot of us feel that way, right? A lot of us feel like we're just on the hamster wheel doing the same thing over and over, and it doesn't feel like we're moving forward. And then a lot of times people will be like, what? October's almost over. Where did the time go, right? Or we look at our littles and they're like already, going into middle school or going into high school or whatever it is. It's interesting, right? Because the time keeps moving forward. And especially when we're going through tough emotional things, either seasonal depression or grief or, something challenging is happening and you don't know how to move forward, closing those loops on small things does help you to move forward. Really recognizing, like, if you can get the table cleared off, that's helpful. If you can, I love a clean bathroom, like that's gold star, like, awesome for me, especially when I have to clean the bathroom myself. But, you know, or changing the sheets, or, you know, getting a pile of laundry done. Like, closing those little loops is how we continue to move forward. You know, clearing off the desk or opening the mail, whatever it is, those are how we get through to the next time we have another pile of mail. And I get it, for neuroatypical people, sometimes the hyperfixation or the transition is really difficult from one thing to the next. And then we feel like we're not being successful at life. And success is relative. I think I have a podcast about that. But really recognizing how you're measuring it, and if you're getting those endorphins to just feel like you've accomplished something, right? Not that it's tied to your worth and value, but being able to close those loops does help to be able to recognize, okay, that's one thing done. And a lot of times, and I've talked about it, people with anxiety will keep going all through the day, get it done, get it done, get it done. And then by the time they lay down for bed, then their brain is like, okay, cool, what did we not get done? Or what still needs to happen? Or what's going to happen a week from now or a year from now, or, you know, all the things. And that's when I say, like, if you need to get up and make a list just to get it out of your brain, that closes the loop. Just being able to be like, okay, well, these are the things I got done. These are the things that I was able to, you know, have a connection with, or, you know, make space for, or have a funny moment with your kiddos, or whatever it is, right? Being able to acknowledge those things every night before I go to bed. And I share all the things about my life, but I do a little meditation, you know, once I can lay down and just, you know, relax in the dark with the rain sounds happening. I put a rain sound on Alexa so that it helps to block out some of the city noises. But I release everything that I didn't get done. I release everything that isn't mine to manage anymore. I can't do anything about tomorrow's problem until it's tomorrow. And that really does help to close the loop for me. And I rest much better. I think I shared with you guys, I try not to use, and I don't use my phone at night once I get into bed. I put it on like sleep mode or whatever. I don't scroll, and that has helped my brain so much to be able to close that loop, right? So I might scroll before I go to bed when I'm, you know, on a couch or somewhere else, but I don't scroll in bed. I do it first thing in the morning, but I don't do it before I go to sleep. That helps me close the loop, right? And getting to that place of gratitude. Honestly, looking at the things that are good. You know that I ask my clients every session, what's good? And so many of them are so good at now coming in, talking about that. And when they're feeling better, it's easier to get to that place. But we've got to be able to work through the things that we need to get done, because there's always things that we need to get done in a day. Not that it's tied to who we are or, you know, what our character is, but when we live a life, like there are lots of things to accomplish and lots of loops to close. Making order from chaos is a way for an anxious brain, or just a brain in general, to be able to feel a little bit more settled. There are so many things happening right now, and there are things happening all the time. Again, we're not special in that way, but if you can find little loops to close and ways to make order from chaos and to clear off spaces a little bit at a time. Yes, you're going to get distracted. Yes, life is going to happen. Yes, there are going to be hard and difficult, challenging things, but sometimes just closing one loop in a 24-hour period does help to make your brain feel a little bit better. All right, there's your nugget. I have now 4 videos that I need to edit, and really I just need to cut off the beginning and the end, and I will. But you can find the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Thank you again to everyone who's listening. I am often humbled by just how it continues to just be out there. And I know that sometimes it feels like, for me, I'm screaming into the void, and I don't know who it affects or who it gets to, but for those of you who continue to listen, who continue to invest in yourselves and learn skills and tools to be able to get through life a little bit more easily, know that I see you and I'm grateful for you. And so, yeah, there's your nugget. If you need to get a hold of me, lx2.cod.coach@gmail.com. You can reach me on all of my socials, Luna_X2_LLC on Instagram. I think it's LunaX2 LLC on Facebook. LX2 Codependency Coaching on TikTok. So, and YouTube, I think it's LX2 COD Coach. There's your nugget. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.